Hello, everyone. Welcome to the latest episode of Product Marketing Perspective. I'm your host, Kushal Khandelwal, a fellow product marketer, and I'm here to bring to you conversations about all things product marketing with some of the most influential marketing leaders from the SaaS space in India. Today, we'll be in conversations with Janani Dwarakanath, Senior Director of Product and Growth Marketing at FreshWorks. She heads marketing for FreshWorks flagship products in the sales and martech space and has been at the core of scaling FreshWorks into one of the largest unicorns in the country. Also known as JD in short. JD, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited to start this conversation. Uh, Before we dive in, would you like to share with our audience a little bit about your journey into product marketing and maybe also share something fun about you outside of work?
Sure. Hey, hi, Kushal. Thank you for having me on your podcast today. I've been a fan. I've looked at a lot of your podcasts earlier. So you had some great people
Thank
come
you.
and talk to you and share their journey and their experiences. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you.
Okay, quickly about myself. I've been in the marketing space for the last, I think, almost 15 years now. I've been with FreshWorks for almost a decade, just short of a year, so about 9 years. I joined the company back in 2015. We were only about 28 mil at that point of time.
Mhm.
We're close to about 600, 650 million at this at the current juncture. I started my career at FreshWorks by being one of the first marketing managers here. So I set up a large part of the marketing team here. I started with brand, set up the brand team, set up comms, set up PR, analyst relations, and also large parts of the product marketing team. Um, Before Freshworks, I was at Cognizant. So I was heading APAC branding for them. That's India, Philippines, some parts of China, Malaysia, all of that. I did that for about 5 years. This was just hardcore employee and employer branding. Prior to that,
Mhm.
I worked in consulting. So I was in FMCG consulting, funnily selling soaps and shampoos to the world. So I worked a lot with ITC at that point of time. So yeah, from like going from one kirana store to the other, to then IT services, and then now SaaS. So that's been my journey.
That sounds like a really fun time you've had during the career from branding to uh, retail to employer branding like you mentioned, and then growing the entire Freshworks team, building all these different functions within marketing. It sounds really great, right? All right, let's dive into it. I wanted to start with my favorite topic. I've seen product marketing take on a lot of different roles across different companies, and it is popularly considered to be a very misunderstood function. I wanted to understand what your take on that is and how you define product marketing in Freshworks. What does the team do? What does the department stand for, and so on?
Yeah. So product marketing is definitely there's a spectrum, right? And maybe we'll talk about it a little later, but it's very different in a startup, a really tiny company, and there is an evolution that it takes from what product marketing means in a small company to what product marketing means in maybe a mid-sized company like Freshworks, and then what it would mean in a much larger enterprise like your Salesforce and Oracles of the world, right? So there is an
Hmm.
evolution that product marketing takes. But if you look at it fundamentally, there are only three large areas that a product marketer works in, right? So the first one is, hey, how do I bring a particular product to the market? Right. So that's the first one. It could be understanding the market, figuring out what's the product market gap, working with the product management team on trying to figure out what could be the right product or it could be a right feature. All of that is in the first bucket, right? The second one is on the uh, okay, you've brought something to the market, great. Now, how do I go out and promote that, right? So, all your
Right.
GTM functionalities would come in the second bucket. It could be, okay, now that you've messaged the product, what is the cohort that I need to take it to? What is the market understanding? What are my competitors doing? How can I, work on the PLG aspects within maybe it could be a trial, it could be all of that. So, that's the second bucket, right? The third one is the larger customer engagement piece. So now that I messaged it, I brought them on board. They've signed up for my particular product.
Hmm.
Sorry, my screen just went off. How can I make sure that I retain them inside the product, engage with them, and then make sure that they go on to become advocates in the future, right? So
Right.
these are three large areas that a product marketer typically works on. And
Mhm.
in Freshworks, it's this is where it is at right now. But we didn't start here, we started in another place, and maybe subsequently we can talk about that as well.
Awesome. That's a lovely perspective, and I'm sure our audience will love that as well. And like you mentioned, you've led marketing and product marketing, and at different stages, you joined pretty early at about, I think, 28 or 30 million
Yeah,
ARR, and
yeah,
now you're at much, much higher. I think somewhere close to more than 700 million, right? As a company,
yeah,
and I'm sure you've gone through a lot of organizational market changes, a lot of evolution in the team and your role
100%.
as well, right? I was wondering, how did your role and that of product marketing as a function, like you mentioned, right, at a big company, what it's like, how has that evolved from back when you joined to now?
Yeah, that's a great question. And oftentimes when I speak to startups or founders or marketing leaders in smaller organizations, I keep telling them that there is no one shoe fits all. It really depends on what your
Yeah.
organization is. But there are certain rules. There are certain cardinal rules that I recommend that everybody follow. Right. One is product marketing it should always be tied to revenue. Right. That's the primary rule that I feel like as a product marketer, you should set for yourself, that anything and everything that you do as a product marketer, it should be tied to some sort of impact, right? But if you look at it from an evolution standpoint, there are just three large areas where I'll break it down and say how that evolution happens, right? So the first area is product marketers in a smaller company start out as generalists and then evolve into becoming specialists, right? Let me take my team for example. Say 5 years ago, when I was heading maybe a smaller marketing team. It was a product called Fresh Sales. This product marketing team did everything from writing SEO pages, making sure that the paid ads are going. We had a paid ads team always, but making sure that even writing copy for the ads, making sure the landing pages are written by us, SEO was done by us, putting up the website on the CMS ourselves. So we had a CMS and we would type in the web pages and then host it up. Writing K-base articles, all of the solution articles were written by the product marketing team. Product marketing team even wrote in-app content. We didn't have specialized UX UI writers for that, so the product marketing team wrote a lot of the content that you see inside the screens in some of these products. So we were a catch-all, right? Anything that the company
Hmm.
needed, which was in the ambit of marketing, product marketing would do that, right? There was only, like, I would say there were two or three marketing teams. Product marketing was one. There was a paid marketing team, and then there was brand, obviously, right? But
Right.
brand was more central company brand. But initially brand was also tied to product marketing because there's only one product, so there's only one brand.
Right.
As you had multiple brand products come in, brand sort of evolved out and emerged out on its own. But we would do analyst relations. Product marketing is a generalist sort of role in a smaller company, because you're the only team that has understanding of the market, of the product, and of the customer extremely in good depth, right? So start out as generalist. There's a lot of breadths that you build, and then go on to, in a company of our size, you become a lot more specialist, right? uh, you have specialized, like where product marketing works now primarily on messaging and positioning.
Hmm.
It's a lot more uh, I would say put together in a format where we focus on a lot more strategy, and the execution aspects are held with a lot of other teams. I'll give you one small example. Right now, say I would need to send um a large customer email, right? So we have a customer marketing team that comes in, that takes care of cohorting those customers, figuring out what's the frequency of the emails that needed to be sent, helping put together that message and then send it out, right? So product
Right.
marketing comes in there and says, hey, this is a feature that I'm launching, this is what I want the customer to know. But there are allied teams that work together on executing that, right? So product marketing
Hmm.
now has evolved, that's the second aspect, into more from a execution team to a strategy team. So in a company of my size, say I have close to about, I handle 5 products, so I have about 17, 18 people on my team. Uh, that's actually a decent number for 5 products if you look at it that way.
Right.
The reason I'm able to maintain it at this number is because a lot of the execution elements are out, right? And this team focuses only on, hey, how can I add value? How can I sell that value? And how can I do that extremely well, given the context of the market, the product, and the customer, right? So there are two things we spoke about. One is generalist to specialist, and the
Mhm.
second one is from execution to strategic. And the third one I think is also very important is initially product marketing teams, we were doers, right? We would like, and I know it's sort of tied to the execution bit, but we would do everything. But right now we've gone to a format where we're drivers, right? There's a difference between a driver and a doer. A
Mhm.
driver is somebody where I say, hey, this is the path, this is the direction, this is how I'd like to go. And drivers usually work with a set of doers to get to that particular place, right? So that's where we are at now. If I can boldly say that the product marketing team at Freshworks is one of the most strategic teams in the company, uh, given our vantage point of understanding, like I said, the market, the customer, and the product,
Right.
but also one of the teams that works pretty much with every single team in the company.
Yeah. I think that a lot of product marketers will probably resonate with that as well, because I know for a fact that right now I'm working for a smaller company, and we are doers and we are drivers at the same time,
Yeah.
right? We have to do things ourselves, we have to drive certain things ourselves as well. So I think that's pretty spot on. Moving on, I'm also a little curious. During your career, during your I think 15 years, if there's been a particular team or a department that you built, but it didn't turn out to be what you thought it would be, right? Could you talk a little bit about what worked in that and what didn't?
I think over this evolution, there are lots of teams that I've built, and then there are teams that we've disbanded as well.
Right.
I'll give you one example. SEO was one team that we built up from scratch, but over a period of time, we felt like, hey, maybe we need like a central SEO team to come in and take it up. And there's a lot of science and strategy that goes into that. So that was a
Mm-hmm.
team that I built up. And then over a period of time, I felt like maybe a central team would be better. So we sent it to a central team. But somewhere along the line, we felt like, what? While a central team understands the mechanics of it, the SEO tooling of it, the meta tags, all of that, the
Mm-hmm.
core messaging still resides with product marketing, right? So
Right.
it's almost been like we had it, we gave it away, and then now we're at a place where we're sort almost like we're working on it together. Like that's one good example of how product marketers, you should give away things. Like it's not like the tendency as a product marketing, because you start with so much breadth, is to say, what, I don't want to give away anything in my portfolio, I want to have it all.
Right.
I had a mutiny in my hands when I told my team that we're going to give away SEO, and they're like, how can you do this, etc. And then the minute I gave it away, 2 months later, they were like, best decision. And now when it's come back, they're like, why are we doing this? Why are we taking it up again, right? So somewhere along the line, that's one team. Again, knowledge bases, solution articles, in product help.
Mm-hmm.
uh, that's a team that I built up again from scratch when I was a product marketer. Somewhere along the line, figured that maybe a PM and a PM team is better suited to doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But again, right, it's sort of coming back into a format where, hey, we'll have a tech writer do the solution articles, but anything with in product adoption, that's something that a product marketer will handle and take care, right? So the how to is done by the technical team, but telling the customer that here is a feature that you can use and this is how you're going to benefit from that feature, that value selling of the feature resides with product marketing.
Right.
Whereas the know how do you set it up, the admin guide, things like that, which are also extremely important, but that's
Mm-hmm.
it's with a completely separate team. So over this evolution, I've built up multiple teams, sort of, given it away, but then also got it back in some shape or form. So I'm always conscious about, hey, how am I balancing this, um, the work between what is something that we need to drive as opposed to something that we need to contribute to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that cross-functional collaboration is like a big part of any product marketing team, and it's always tricky to find that balance between, should I do this myself? Should I have the expert come in and do it? Right. So, what's what's your like one tip to helping somebody find that balance, whether they should do this themselves or just delegate it to the expert team to do it?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. Uh, eh, for me, there are two things that it depends on. One is at an individual level to say that, hey, are you the right person to do that, right? Maybe there are times where I've taken up something because there wasn't anybody to do it. Like I said, in smaller
Right.
product marketing teams, that's the case. You're
Yeah.
kind of catch all. I didn't come with PR experience in this company, but I took up PR because as a part of my marketing portfolio that was, given to me. So initially, product marketers take up a lot of roles and responsibility. That's not hardcore product marketing, but we can define what product marketing means, right? Uh, but yeah, one is as an individual, do you have the skill set to do that? There were people in my team who were managing SEO, who were writing the articles, etc. But we also had people that came in as the company evolved, who knew exactly how SEO worked. They knew the math and the science behind it, right? So reevaluating and figuring out whether you're the right person is number one, but that's step two, right? Step one is figuring out, okay, what's the need of the business, right? And making sure that if you feel like you can contribute to it and make an impact on that, keeping in line with whatever the business needs, then you should take it up. But if you feel like, hey, this is just a priority for me, but it's not a priority for the business, at least my line of business, then you should give it away. So everything that I look at and my team looks at, we're always going back to that fundamental North Star metric, right? Is this going to contribute to what the product marketing function has signed up for at Freshworks? Is this
Mhm.
part of our OKR? Yes, no. If no, okay, how can I contribute to this but not drive to this if it needs my, 2 cents there? So that's how we sort of figure it out. Again, this is an answer for a slightly larger team where we have things like OKRs in place, but for a
Right.
smaller team it boils down to, do you have that skill set or not? If you're not the right person to do it, don't do it, or figure out how to get it done, right? So
Yeah.
that would be my at least
Yeah.
that's
I
how
think
I would
that's
navigate it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty interesting because I've been in those situations a lot of times myself, and that's the question I ended up with. Like, am I good enough to do this job? Do I have the expertise or not? Right, and that pretty much gives you the answer sometimes. Yeah, I think that's
Sometimes
pretty
you have to
interesting.
build it, right? If there are like just two people in the team and you don't have the expertise, you have to figure out how to get that expertise and build it. But if there
Out
are
of the two,
experts,
who's better at doing it? Yeah, then that's the
exactly. But if
question.
there
Yeah,
are people who are experts that you think you should defer to, do whatever is right for the
yeah,
business, right? Maybe it's something that they should take up. So,
yeah,
uh,
totally.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, or you can just take it up as a opportunity for yourself to add to your skill sets.
exactly.
That's true. Great. Thanks for sharing that. That's pretty interesting as well. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit uh, about some of the work that you've done in the past, right? Two of my favorite campaigns, especially, right?
Yeah,
So, Freshworks has always entered, the red oceans per se, and taken on giants like Salesforce, Zendesk, and these big names, right? And you've led a lot of famous, popular, competitive campaigns. I think there was one during called hashtag Failsforce. Was that right?
yeah, there was
Yeah.
one.
And then there was one more. I don't recall the name, but you probably know it better. I'd love to talk a little bit about those and the kind of impact that they've had on Freshworks' journey as well as your journey as a leader within the Freshworks team.
Yeah, it's been a while. So the first campaign that we did, and this was the time when I was handling brand, right? Like I said, when I started with the company,
Hmm.
I started by heading brand. So I think back to like summer of 2016. So this was around June, July. We were launching this small product at that point of time called Fresh Sales, which is a CRM product. And we were figuring out, and how do we go ahead and market it, right? So we had two relatively larger products at that point of time. One was Fresh Desk, one was Fresh Service. I think as a company, we were about maybe 60, 70 mil around
Mhm.
then at that point of time. And we were just going to launch fresh sales, and we were all wondering, how do we go and, make a splash? So at that point of time, one thing that, was coming up was Dreamforce. So,
Right.
that's one of Salesforce's biggest events that they do every year. Has, thousands of people that, throng their shows. So we said, okay, everybody who is maybe a partner or a customer is going to be, a lot of people are going to be there
Yeah.
at
True.
Dreamforce. So why don't we use this opportunity to go do something fun there? So me and a friend group of my friends, we were sitting down at lunch, and we were talking at that point of time about how earlier at Freshworks we used to spend almost 100K plus every year. There's a large amount for a very small company like us
Mm.
at, using Salesforce. And somebody remarked at the lunch table saying, you know what, I'm sorry that we didn't launch fresh sales earlier, right? And I said, you know what, I'm going to catch lunch with you guys later. But I think that's a great tagline for a campaign. So this is how our first product campaign called, sorry I didn't launch earlier, start. I mean, the campaign, pardon my language, the campaign was called "Fuck You Fresh Sales," right? And we
Right.
had the word FUCK beeped out on the buses. I remember, so it's almost like somebody comes and says, "There's a person, crying out on that bus rap that says, hey, I could have bought, a Beamer instead of spending X on Salesforce, or I could have done something else, instead of doing something else on Salesforce. Salesforce is expensive, Salesforce is time consuming. And so that person says, no, F you, fresh sales. And then we on the side, we say, you know what, we're really sorry we didn't launch earlier, but we're here now, and, we're all up for grabs. Um, I remember going and pitching this to Girish, and he looked at me like I was crazy. But
I'm sure.
somewhere
Yeah.
along the line, he sort of agreed, and only if we beep out the bad words. I remember we spoke about this
Right.
campaign on Thursday, and I was on a flight to go to San Francisco to figure it out on that Sunday, right?
Oh,
So that's
wow.
how fast things worked. And that was our first bus campaign. We had a lot of people sharing us, lot of eyeballs at Dreamforce. We also put up billboards on 101, etc. So we've done a lot of fun campaigns in the past, where because we're a challenger brand. And you spoke about red ocean strategy, right?
Mm.
uh, I'll maybe quickly talk about two three things as part of that strategy. We're a challenger brand. Sorry, I have a really bad cold. Um,
Right.
it's like a Nike versus Under Armour, whatever, right? So it was
Mm.
always been a Zendesk versus us, which is Freshdesk, a ServiceNow versus Freshser versus Salesforce versus Fresh Sales.
Right.
So we've always gone after markets where there have been a lot of players. It's been a red ocean market. But there are two or three things that we've done extremely well that I'll talk about. One is we rode the wave. Let's talk about the first product, which is Freshdesk. This was at a time when customer service, as it was primarily on email or phone, multi-channel campaigns were not big. Nobody was providing omni-channel support. So Girish saw this as hey, he could see that people wanted better customer support, and he was trying to ride that wave back in 2013, we rode that same way when it came to COVID. We were one of the companies that did exceptionally well during the COVID years. We also went IPO during COVID,
Right.
where the B2C space, right, which was taking off at that point of time. We capitalized on that. Similarly, while we rode the wave, the second thing that I think we did very well was playing to our strengths. We know this is a large market. We know there are a lot of players there. But in
Mhm.
the markets that we entered, there were a lot of players who were catering to the enterprises of the world, right? So you had a Salesforce or a Zendesk concentrating on these larger companies, but smaller companies were completely left unattended to. So we said, hey, we see an opening there,
Mm.
we see a gap there, and that's what we went after, right? And the third thing that we did very well was listening to our customers. So we rode the wave, we played to our strength, but we were always in touch with the customer to understand, hey, what is it that they want, and how can we constantly fine tune our product to meet the customer needs.
Right.
So I think these three things really helped us, in our red ocean strategy, where it was always going after markets and products that had larger TAM, and never in terms of niche spaces.
Interesting. I'm very curious as to how you convinced Girish to get approve those campaigns. I'm sure that's a whole different conversation as well.
If I think about it now, we may not do it now, as an IPO company, but as a smaller company,
Yeah.
we have limited budgets, right? And I think we just wanted to go have fun, right? We were like, you know what, let's go do something crazy and try and get a lot of eyeballs. So that's what we did. We were a bit of a rebel child back then.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of companies that have sort of been inspired by that campaign and sort of doing versions of it now. I think even this year, Dreamforce, there were a couple of companies that did a
Yeah.
couple of campaigns around there, which was, I mean, sure, I'm sure they got a lot of eyeballs as well. But in terms of impact, I was also curious to understand. One, were you able to sort of relate that this whole campaign back in terms of revenue as an impact, or was the goal more of just getting your positioning and your messaging out there and getting eyeballs on that?
Yeah. Great question. Like if you go back to some of the answers that I gave earlier, everything that we did, it always needed to have a revenue impact. That's one thing that at Freshworks,
Right.
we're very very uh, bullish about, or we want to make sure that everything that we do, there's a revenue impact to it. So when you look at that particular campaign, there was an online component and an offline component. So the offline component was the bus campaign, the billboards, etc. But we also had a really large scale online campaign to it. So anybody who would see the bus and they would come to the website, the messaging was the same. We also had like banner ads online that had the same messaging come out, to the point where everything that we wanted to drive over the next 3 or 4 months was around the fact that, hey, we're a great product. You're stuck with maybe an incumbent sales force that's not working really well for you, but in a very fun and satirical way, we talked about how is it that we are better, right? So it was almost like a 360 campaign that we did. And this particular product that we launched, Fresh Sales, was the fastest product to hit $1 million in the company after it was launched, right? So we almost had like weekly targets, monthly targets, I would say even daily targets to start with when we launched that particular campaign. Hey, is the website traffic going on? Are we having signups? Okay, now that we
Right.
have signups, how many people from those signups are actually converting
Mhm.
into actual sale? So it was not just a bus campaign. That bus campaign had online components, website messaging, all the way down to even our sales scripts that we used when we spoke to our customers, were all part of that same campaign. We use the same vocabulary, we use the same messaging, and we would always be like, we're really
Right.
sorry that we were not there to help you out earlier, but we're here now and we got you, and this is how we can do better for you. So yeah, it kind of broke records in a way that it hit $1 million in ARR, at an exceptionally fast speed.
Wow, I think the amount of effort that probably went into aligning
Yeah.
sales, customer success as well, and marketing and all these other functions on that messaging in such a short period of time. I
Yeah.
think it was 3, 4 days, I suppose, Thursday to Sunday, something like that, right?
Sunday I flew out. The
Okay.
campaign took about maybe a month. We had to get the
Oh, okay.
buses. I had to
Yeah,
go
yeah,
there,
yeah.
figure
Right.
out which buses actually go through SF. It's not like we had some large agency at that point of time. It was just, me and one more person figuring out. Then we did all of it in-house. We designed the bus wraps in-house. We
Wow.
had a great team of like designers working with us to sort of figure that out. Worked with the Metropolitan Department of, the city of San Francisco.
Mhm.
So the campaign took maybe about a month to design and launch, because there are logistics in place that need to get done.
Right,
There, things
right,
need to
right.
get printed and wrapped. But we used that month to rally the sales folks within the
Mhm.
organization, get the website up. I remember the website was up in 2 days. We wrote like all the copy for it, sitting like, I remember, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. We shot videos on the fly. So while it was crappy and fun,
Yeah.
The one thing is we made sure that everybody was aligned and working on it so that the messaging remains constant.
Sound like a lot of hustle, but as long as it's getting you the revenue back, it's
Yeah,
worth
yeah,
everything.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
every piece of
Otherwise,
sweat.
as a marketer, you're not going to get your budget back the next year, right?
Yeah. That's so true.
Yeah.
All right. That's great. Moving on, you mentioned earlier. You mentioned you've got some experience in brand marketing before you joined Freshworks as well, right? I wanted to understand your perspective on how similar, how different do you think brand marketing and product marketing are for SaaS companies? Like, how can the two of them coexist in a company, and when does a company like begin to start needing a brand marketing team and a separate product marketing team? Can they be like one team at the start? Like, what's
Yeah.
your perspective? What's your take on that?
So before I go on to that, I'll tell you a small story. Okay. This was when, during the time that I was selling soaps and shampoos, right? So this was early 2000s. So I was a freshly minted B school grad. I joined this consulting company, and we were, like I said, we were working for ITC. And at
Mm-hmm.
that point of time, ITC was launching this soap called Vivel, right? I don't know if you've heard of it. So
Right,
Vivel
right,
has
yeah.
it's a common soap. So we will, they were launching it in like multiple variants, and there's
Mm-hmm.
this we will sandal and we will rose and whatnot. Right? So the product was actually good. It was extremely well made soap. ITC had put in a lot of R&D in figuring out the soap. They were desperate to get into the FMCG market because they have one of the best logistics in the world, right? There are
Right,
villages that don't have electricity and fresh water, but they'll have a kirana store that sells, ITC cigarettes, right?
yeah,
So that's last mile in India is ITC has conquered it all, right? So
absolutely.
here we were trying to sell that soap and it was just not selling, right? It was not selling. They were giving distributors gold coins. They were trying to, push it as much as they can. um, uh, all sorts of like branding campaigns, TV campaigns, sponsoring everything from cricket tournaments to whatnot. But the needle was not moving. The market share was abysmally low, to the point where they were like, okay, maybe we should just, forget this, like take on these losses of like, thousands of crores, which is what they would have spent across the board, and said, let's just, be done with it. So as a last ditch effort, what we did was we said, okay, let's try and figure it out before we shut this down. And we teamed up with this company called IMRB. That's a market research firm. So there was a large scale marketing effort that was taken to go out there and figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there is a point to this story, but I'll go
Okay.
on with the story. Uh, so what we realized at that point of time, right, after all of that effort, which I think should have been done right at the get go, is I don't know if you know this, this was maybe 20 years, or like I said, 15, 16 years back.
Mm-hmm.
Over 70% of India, the household uses one soap for the entire household, right? So we are
Right.
the shower gel categories of the world. We are in the top maybe 2%. 70% of India, the family uses one soap for that family. Mom, dad, kids, no, dada, dadi, how does it doesn't
Right.
matter. One soap, right? And typically in a large part of India, that was the hammam, right? There would be a
Mm.
hammam.
Okay.
If the mother decides what the soap is, it would be a hammam and neem and antiseptic and
I
all of that,
remember those. Yeah.
right? Or it would be like a life boy if the father decides what that soap is, right? If
Mm.
they were using that. So here we were going into a market where we were trying to fight the hammams of the world, where because this Vivel at that point of time was getting pitched as an antiseptic kind of a soap with neem and whatnot.
Mm.
We've realized that we can never displace the hammams of the world, right? And it would take a lot of deep wallets to go and fight against a hammam and convince that mother. So we completely changed direction and we said, okay, we don't want to fight with the hammam, but we may, appeal to a younger audience, which is the lux of the world, right? And maybe go after an audience which is like a teenage audience. So we completely changed our strategy, rebranded the product to have ingredients that would, maybe a young teen or maybe somebody in their early 20s would find interesting, and not do like a sandal, but do things like shea butter and jojoba oil. I'm just saying,
Okay.
ingredients. And all the ads now were not towards the mothers but towards a preteen sort of category, and the
Yeah.
market share jumped, like jumped left, right, and center, right? So the reason I'm saying this is whether you're in brand or in product marketing doesn't matter. You need to understand the market and the consumer first, right? So the biggest learning that I got from my FMCG marketing background was that, obviously customer is king, but data is extremely important. You better understand the market before you go into that market. So it's where you ask me about, hey, how are they, differences, etc. The
Mm.
underlying philosophy for both the teams is the same, right?
Same. Correct.
Whether you're selling a brand or you're selling the product, you please know your audience really well. And that's
Mm.
that's that's the story I wanted to sort of say, doesn't matter which team it is in, there are these underlying
Yeah. Yeah. Totally
philosophies
makes
and
sense. Yeah.
principles, right? But coming back, a smaller startup, it doesn't matter, right? Your brand team, your product marketing team, it's all one and the same. But I think we addressed it in an earlier question, where as the company grows and evolves and you say you have even multiple products, the brand team comes in. When I genuinely think you need a brand team only when you're a much larger company, and you want to focus on an where you have multiple brands and you want to maybe an Uber team to focus on that. But
Mhm.
for a much smaller company, I think maybe under 20-30 million, I don't see the necessity of a brand company, to be honest, or a brand team, to be honest, because I think the product marketing team sort of doubles down as the brand team. So when I advise startups, also, I would say, hey, wait till you hire somebody for brand, because there needs to be that Uber level message that they need to take that you think your product marketing team at this point cannot do.
Fair enough. Yeah. That makes sense. And I think I like the way you first underlined the similarity between the two before digging into the difference. And with the example, it was pretty great. Awesome. Uh, all right. I think we're almost nearing the end of the episode. But before we wrap up, uh, would you like to share some advice with, younger product marketing leaders who are looking to build a new team or starting a new function? How do you reckon they get started?
I would I would primarily talk about what we just spoke about right now, right? Understand the market, very, very important. That's the only way that you can add value. So understand the market, talk to customers, don't be in a ivory tower, don't be in a bubble. Product marketing is not writing like website copy or in-app copy. That's an execution aspect, but it's definitely a lot
Yeah.
more strategic, right? So understanding the market, understanding the product, understanding the customer, I think that's 101, which I recommend all product marketers to do really well. I think the second thing that I want to talk about, which I think is extremely important, is as product marketers, you're one team that is working with every other team in the company, right? You're working with the product management, you're working
Hmm.
maybe with engineering, sometimes you're working with sales, you're working with the hunting team, you're working with the farming team, you're
Right.
working with the customer support team, the customer success team, the brand team, the digital marketing team. I can't think of a team, honestly, Kushal, that my team doesn't work with. Like on a
Yeah, that's
daily
true.
basis, my team works with at least 20 different teams in the company, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So one important thing as a product marketer you need to do is to be collaborative, right? uh,
Oh,
Typically, as strategic owners, a lot of times as product marketers, we tend to keep everything close to our chest, like this is my baby, like this is what I need to do. Like,
yeah, yeah, that's
so there is
true.
a difference between being a driver and a doer, right? Sometimes while we are both at, there are projects where we're drivers and doers.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think product marketing marketers need to understand that they need to be collaborative, build relationships with every other person in the company, and be drivers but not doers all the time, right? So that's the second one. And I think the third thing that I want, which I individually also believe in, is this is one team where there needs to be constant learning, right? Because the market is
Right.
dynamic, the product is dynamic, the customer needs keep changing. So I always also am looking for people when I'm hiring, as people who have this thirst for knowledge and learning. They want to keep updating themselves constantly. So the third thing as a product marketer I would advise is, keep up your learning, right? So understand the market, the customer, the product, be collaborative, and always be learning.
Awesome. So research, learn, collaborate, and share.
Yeah, I like that. I like how
Yeah,
you said that.
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, JD. This has been a great conversation. Thanks again for your time and candidly sharing so much about your personal and professional experience with our audience. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and I'm sure our audience is gonna love this episode as well. Uh, before we go, JD, if any of our listeners are interested in getting in touch with you, what's the best place for them to do that?
Yeah, they can write to me at janani.dwarakanath at freshworks.com, or my personal email is janani.dwarak at gmail. But LinkedIn's a great place to reach out to. So yeah, they can look me up, Janani Dwarakanath, on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to chat and talk to anybody who reaches out to me on that.
Awesome, guys. So please do reach out to her if you want to talk to her at all. Well, thanks again, JD. It's been lovely hosting you,
Thank you,
and
Kushal. It's been a
I
great chat. I know we had a fun conversation when I met you in Bangalore as well. I know you're
absolutely.
very active in the SaaS scene, so keep up the good work, and thank you for setting this up. Great questions. It also helped me sort of go back in time and jog a little bit of my memory. But yeah, thank you for helping me do that.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed the conversation. I'll hope to have you here again sometime soon. And for our listeners, please share your thoughts in the comment section. And we hope you enjoy this episode and JD's perspective on product marketing. Please don't forget to follow Product Marketing Perspective for more such conversations with product marketing leaders in India.